Let me tell you about the Electoral Commission. Now, a crunch inter-party advisory committee meeting is underway amidst heavy security, as expectations are also being raised that a consensus may just be reached despite entrenched positions between the Electoral Commission and the parties who are against compilation of a new register. But even before that emergency IPAC meeting ends, Election Observer Group Coalition of Domestic Election Observers, CODEO, is casting doubt over the likelihood that the two sides would reach a consensus. The meeting was convened at the instance of the Eminent Advisory Committee following the opposition that greeted the EC's earlier decision. We'll hear from CODEO shortly, but first, here is a reminder of the EC's position.
I know we are going to talk to them about the need for the new register. That's what I know.
So you can't call this consultation. This is a meeting to explain.
If I am consulting you, I'm seeking your advice. So yes, so we are going to do consultation. But the part of the consultation, we can modify the approach that we want to adopt. We have always been seeking the advice about how best to go about the new registration.
So just for clarity, you've taken the decision you compile, but now it's about what is the best way to do the compilation.
And that's what we have been doing always, yes.
Well, chairman of the New Patriotic Party's 2020 campaign team, Peter McMenu, who is also attending the meeting, told my colleague Kwesi Parker-Wilson the commission must be allowed to carry out its mandate independently. According to him, those pushing the EC to change their decision wants the commission to fail in their mandates for this year's election.
Yes. 4 years ago, 2016, we went through the same mill. At the end of the day, we had a successful limited registration and ultimately a general elections. Now we're going to have a new register. We have been consistent with our stand that we need a new register. So we still maintain our stand. And our stand is that the Electoral Commission, as former President Mahama said, must be giving. We must express our views, but they have the constitutional mandate to take their own decision. All this hullabaloo, if the election fails, who is going to be blamed? Is it IPAC or the Electoral Commission? So what is this?
So your position.
But some people, and I think I must add it, think that they must push for the elections to fail so that they can blame the Electoral Commission.
Why you accusing the NDC of trying to push the elections?
I'm saying some people. The Commission must be allowed to do its work, as former President Mahama said, and I stand by what he said. I think in 2016 we allowed the Electoral Commission to do its work, and I remember at that time the media houses were asking me, and they kept asking me, if they don't do a new register, what will you do? So go and ask NDC, if they do a new register, what will you do?
It's certainly a situation that has very high stakes in there. Well, Peter McMenu is leading the campaign for the NPP in election 2020. Kwesi Parker-Wilson is monitoring that IPAC meeting for us. Parker will join us, but we can now hear from CODEO's Albert Ahin, who is skeptical that a consensus will be reached at all.
Honestly, for today, I expect that the two opposing groups will listen to good counsel coming from the eminent people, and that at the end of the day, we'll find a permanent solution to this impasse. It is going to be difficult because the two sides have taken entrenched positions, and you know that entrenched positions are very difficult to uproot. It's difficult, but let's give it a chance. I believe that with good counseling and people being very tolerant with each other and listening to each other for explanations and whatever, maybe if we are lucky, we'll come out.
There are those who have suggested that the EC's posture is quite worrying because even before this meeting, they had openly announced the date for the compilation of the voters register. So this meeting in itself defeats the purpose of trying to resolve the matter.
It is, you see, but let us also not forget the fact that, and like CODEO once said, this meeting should take into cognizance the fact that this is a body that has been mandated by law, by constitution, to undertake its activities. So maybe it is behaving on those lines, being the fact that they have the mandate to conduct elections, And so they will not allow maybe anybody to dictate to them. That is what maybe they are thinking. The deliberation here should be in such a way that at the end of the day, everybody should be satisfied. If you are going to proceed to do the registration, you should do it and do it well. If it comes up that they are not supposed to do it, then of course a compromise will be found.
So you're calling for a compromise at the end of the day?
Yeah, at the end of the day.
Albert Ahin not so convinced that a consensus may be reached, but acting chairperson of Convention People's Party, Haji Amdatu Ibrahim, is optimistic about somewhat a good outcome.
My expectation is that at the end of the day, Ghana becomes the winner. Understanding will prevail, and then maybe those who are for or against, and those of us who are neutral, maybe the explanation that will be given for and against. And since there are eminent personalities amongst us today, it's not just the IPAC and then EC. I'm sure they've been briefed, and I'm not sure they'll be biased. I think they will speak in a way that will calm nerves, will make everybody understand that we should look at the larger picture, which is Ghana.
Let's go on the phone line now. Kwesi Parker Wilson is joining me. He is monitoring that IPAC for us. He's got his eyes on the ground for us. Hello, Parker.
Hello, Gipsy.
We do know that the meeting is still underway. What do we know? What else do we know?
Right, so Gipsy, the Electoral Commission, or let me say the Advisory Committee, gave the political parties an opportunity to make their point in favor of the creation of a new register, or pitching against the move of creating or compiling a new voter register. And the political party will make their point. Currently, my source tells me that the Electoral Commission, the Advisory Committee put together the political party, have ended the meeting officially, but they are now trying to draft a communique that will reflect the conversation and the discussion that has gone on in the meeting. But what we know is that the NDC and the other political parties who are against the move have indicated to me that the Electoral Commission did not put up a convincing argument as the compilation of a new register is concerned. So for them, they still remain positive that the voters register shouldn't be, or the Electoral Commission should abandon the idea of not creating a new voters register. And the NPP is also pushing the same argument about the support of the Electoral Commission. What they need to do, they have to do. They need to, the NDC and the other parties will have to allow the EC to do its work. So just as I said, that the meeting has ended officially, they are yet to come out, or we are told that they are drafting a communique which reflects the outcome or everything that they discussed this afternoon in the meeting.
So whilst people are looking forward to some sort of consensus, in fact, some people the Codeo, for example, has been less optimistic that they would reach any consensus. But we have to wait for that communique to find out actually what they agreed on. But the advisory committee that they put together, the members were also at this particular meeting. Before they went in, Parker, did you get a chance to interact with them? What did they say?
Yeah, so I wanted to speak to the chairman of the committee, and his reaction and response in the morning was that they were just about to engage the sub-parties and the Electoral Commission. They will speak to me immediately after they are done with the meeting because they have to preempt the outcome of today's meeting. But as you mentioned, they had indicated that not because of the entrenched position by the two major political parties, it will be difficult for them to reach a consensus. That I've been told that it appears the political parties are coming out from the meeting.
Okay.
Okay. So they are still there, but I'm told that they will be returning shortly because the meeting ended and they have agreed on what they need to communicate. They need to communicate to the public as far as today's meeting is concerned. So we are waiting for them. I'm told that in about 2, 3, 5 minutes, they will descend and we will get to know exactly the outcome of today's meeting. And just so you know that the NPP and the NDP are quite upbeat as far as this meeting is concerned. They want to know the outcome as to whether the Electoral Commission will compile the register. And of course, I'm sure most Ghanaians would want to know whether the EC will compile the register. The founder of APC just walked in, Mr. Hassan Ayaga, just walked in. Gifty, we want to engage him briefly so we can listen to him. He wants to address the media briefly.
The political parties were all given 10 minutes to state their case. The EC came with an IT man who actually gave reasons why the EC should compile a new voter register. Some of us, I personally asked one question, whether the voter register was credible or not. And the EC could not answer whether the voter register was credible or not. And if the EC cannot answer that question, why then the need for a new voter register? Because it's when the voter register is not credible that you can say that we need a new voter register. But if you cannot answer that one single question, the EC non-IT men could not answer that question. So you see, what we have here is not a reason, a non-credible voter register, but something else. The EC has to have total management control of the voter register. And having total management of total management of the voter register means garbage in, garbage out, which means that the EC can manipulate the results and determine who the next president is.
Okay, so what did you agree?
We are not satisfied. There was almost chaos out there. For us, we think that the EC themselves have come up with a proposal, and they are looking for a reason to compile a new voter register, not because the voter register is not credible. They cannot define a proper reason to compile. Decided that they the EC. So right now, what is those against, and we need to condemn it again. Waiting for the report coming from the eminent. The report coming from the eminent.
If it goes against you, will you demonstration?
We will proceed with the demonstration. We will hit because we will hit our demonstration.
You go to the EC headquarters.
We will go on the 4th.
Why are you doing that?
Because they don't have a proper reason. You cannot. You have to convince people that yes, of course, the new voter register.
Sami Jemfi also walked out. So Gifty, there's a bit of hello, Gifty.
Are you on air?
Yes. So Gifty, those were the words of Dr. Hassan Ayaga. That we have to get to Sami Jemfi for him to speak to us as well, because we would like to know the position of the NDC as far as this matter is concerned. And since Hassan Ayaga himself was in the meeting, he just came back to tell us that there was no consensus reached, and that the eminent advisory committee told them that they were going to convey the advice to the Electoral Commission. We are waiting for that and hoping that there will be another opportunity for the political parties to engage the Electoral Commission and the advisory committee. So this is what's happening. The political parties are descending one after the other. As I just walked up, we are hoping to see Johnson General Secretary of the NDC and the chairman of the party as well, for example, and the NPP members who are present, the General Secretary of the NPP, John Boydu, and the rest. So that's what's happening at the moment. The chairperson of the committee, no, the committee.
So that's Kwesi Parker Wilson there. Parker is still live at the Coconut Grove Hotel where that inter-party advisory committee was held. The meeting has just ended. Parker was just taking us through some of the things that came up at that particular meeting. We still have Parker on the line, but as you heard there, some chaotic scenes happening there. But of course, you heard the APC's founder, Hassan Ayaga, speak there. He says that he is still unconvinced. He believes that as the status quo remains, that the Electoral Commission can manipulate the results of the election and decide who becomes president of Ghana for the next 4 years during this election 2020. He says that in that meeting, it was almost chaotic. He says there was no, and that was because there was no, according to him, proper arguments by the Electoral Commission to those of them who do not believe in a new voters register. He says that they will continue to proceed with the demonstrations, that is the parties that do not accept the compilation of a new register. He says they will continue to protest that decision, meaning there was no consensus. But we've seen that communications officer for the NDC, Sami Jemfi, who also just walked out, Parker, has been interacting with him. Hello, Parker. Go on.
As far as we are concerned about the procedure, independent presidential candidate of a previous election, who in our opinion did not have any status as far as IPAC is concerned, was allowed to make a presentation. While civil society organizations, which have always played a very important role in our electoral reforms, were denied opportunity to make a presentation. That one we think is very irregular. If it was an IPAC meeting, so-called, then IPAC means inter-party advisory committee, that is political parties and electoral commission. So independent candidates have no rule. But we agreed to relax the rules from the beginning so that we could allow any stakeholder person to make their presentation. Unfortunately, after the independent presidential candidate made a presentation, the civil society group were denied the opportunity to make their own presentation. Be that as it may, we have come to a very important conclusion. The Committee for Eminent Persons assured us that they have heard all the presentations. They believe that each side has made a very reasonable contribution, and so they are going to formulate their advice and then present it to the Electoral Commission with inputs from everything that has been said here. Apart from that, they gave the opportunity that their doors are still open to receive any memos, petitions, or any write-ups of any nature, so they can take all those into consideration when they are advising the Electoral Commission. It must be said, we know when the advice will come. Well, we have no idea, but our protest will. But do you get the sense that the compilation of the register will be no such advice can beyond the fact that we should all keep Ghana in mind when we are fighting for our various. There is no such indication.
Let me just add that the Electoral Commission did their presentation, both technical and financial presentation. At the end of the day, what has come to light is that none of the issues that were raised spoke against the data of the Electoral Commission. So as far as we are concerned, all the other things that the Electoral Commission wants to do can be done without compiling a new data. So we ask the Electoral Commission technical person whether the data is credible or not credible. And he could not tell us that the data is not credible because the Electoral Commission has conducted elections with this data as late as December last year. And for that matter, we believe that all the other things that they want to do can be done without necessarily going back to ask the data through a new registration.
So do you think the process will go into the
yeah, the process we are going ahead. And then let me also put another issue out, and that's the bombshell. The bombshell Electoral Commissioner presentation dropped was that the voter register will be ready by the 8th of November 2020.
3 weeks
to election.
If they are to compile
and we are saying that if you have to compile a new register, go through all the processes, and the register will be ready by 8th of November, less than 1 month to the election, then of course it means that this register cannot be used for election 2020. Because filing of nomination and all other things takes place before 8th of November. And you need a credible and current register as a basis for parliamentary and presidential candidates to file their nomination. And so their presentation shows clearly that time will not allow us to conduct a new register. So operational challenges that are available is not feasible for any new register to be conducted, because if you are telling us that a register will only be ready for use by 8th of November, clearly then it means the election
they are not saying that the register will be ready for use. They said they will finish the exhibition exercise on 8th of November. But there is a lag time between the completion of the exhibition exercise and getting the register, final register, ready. And you need
with the members of the Inter-Party Advisory Committee. You heard him talk earlier to the APC's founder, Hassan Ayariga. He also interacted briefly with Sami Jemfi, and then he spoke to Johnson Asiedu Nketia, General Secretary of the NDC. You also heard Ofoswan Pofo, who is the national chairman of the NDC. Very interesting revelations they're making from that meeting they just had. Johnson Asiedu Nketia started by indicating that one crucial thing that did not happen at this meeting was that no civil society organization was allowed to make a presentation. He said even though they agreed to stick to the rules and to respect the rules that had been put in place, they felt that that was a bit odd. He says that a very important conclusion was reached, and that is that the advisory committee, that is the EC's advisory committee, has given some assurances that they're going to formulate their advice based on the arguments that all the parties have come to make at this particular meeting. And then we heard from Ofoswan Pofo, who is the national chairman of the NDC. Mr. Ofoswan Pofo is indicating what he's calling the bombshell that the EC has dropped, and that is that the voters register, according to the Electoral Commission, will be ready by the 8th of November. He says if that is going to happen, then it is less than a month to the election itself, which is on the 7th of December. He says that means that that register cannot be used for election 2020. And whilst he was saying that, Mr. Asiedu Nketia comes in and says the EC does not actually indicate that the register will be ready on the 8th of November. He says the EC indicates that their processes will end by the 8th of November, which essentially means that the register may not be ready by the 8th of November, as he says. He goes on to say, well, he sounded very agitated. You heard that in his voice. He says that all the EC wants to do, according to Mr. Ofoswan Pofo, can be done. All the argument that the EC has put before them for the reasons why they want to compile the new register, Mr. Ofoswan Pofo says that can be done without a new voters register. Kwesi Parker Wilson is still interacting with them. We'll bring you more as and when we have Parker back on the line. But Member of Parliament for Sekindi, Andrew Ejapa Mesa, says the consequences of deferring the compilation of a new voters register may be potentially explosive for the nation, and it will be prudent to do it now. Speaking on the AM show, Mr. Mesa said the NDC has no moral grounds to raise the issue of cost as far as this matter is concerned. Listen.
Even though the EC had mentioned at the meeting of the IPAC that they were going to commence the process of procuring a new voters register, that item was not an agenda item, and so it could not have been the case that because it wasn't an agenda item, no discussion could be held, or it could not be said that the parties were invited to make a contribution and take a definitive decision on that. And of course, the brouhaha evolved, the back and forth demonstrations and all that. I say it is needless because, you see, Roland, I've heard the arguments. Cost, one. And I ask, so which is more expensive? Going into an election with the political environment that we find ourselves in, where the elections management body has indicated that the system that they are running on today, they themselves cannot verify its reliability into election 2020. Which is more expensive? Leave that hanging so that a potential crisis can evolve, for the system to break down potentially in December, for us to cry wolf that the EC, knowing very well that this system was unreliable, proceeded to use it in election 2020, or that we ought to put in place a new system that ensures that we are all certain about the outcome of the 2020 election. Which is more expensive? Cost? The NDC telling us about cost. This is a request that has gone through due process. I'm sure you've seen the report of the Committee of Special Budget, where critical questions were asked, including the possibility, if any, of even using the National Identification Card system that the NIA was putting in place. And the explanations that were proffered, that look, the coverage so far could not be something that the EC could count on, because per their records, if the current register or the numbers on the current register is anything to go by, then the NIA has not covered sufficiently enough people to enable them use their system. So it was important that they compile a new voters register.
Well, Member of Parliament for Myong, Mohammed Abdulaziz, however, argues that the move by the Electoral Commission suggests ulterior motives. He's questioning the need for fixing a register that the EC has already assessed as credible.
Looking for a credible register for a credible elections. You cannot have a credible, free and fair elections where you don't have a credible register. The EC themselves have told us that the register that we have today is credible. I have heard Jane Mensah herself indicate publicly that the register is credible. If the thing is not broken, why fix it?
Well,
what motive do you have in fixing a register?
Have you not heard the Electoral Commission say concretely that sometimes the fingerprints of some voters is not able to be picked, so they have to rely on manual verification?
That argument is a limping one, and that cannot stand.
I don't get you.
It cannot stand. Because when you say that some people are not able to go through the biometric verification, in the last election that we had, the District Assembly elections, those who were not verified by the BVDs was just about 0.6%. What it means that 99.4% were able to pass through the BVDs. Now you are talking about facial recognition app. That says that in black communities, the success rate is about 80%. If you have a system that can guarantee you over 99%.
Now, all of those arguments were made earlier this morning whilst we were awaiting the inter-party meeting that happened this afternoon. That actually ended just a while ago, and you heard the outcome of that. It looks like the parties still remain in their entrenched or with their entrenched positions, but they're putting together a communique.